will there be an introduction of the session, or shall I just start? That's good.
A little less.
Yeah, so here's another one. Are we ready? Can we start? Okay, welcome everybody. I'm happy to host this open discussion about open projects that we want to talk about today. Thank you for everybody joining here. Let me first introduce the participants in this discussion. First, ladies first, of course, Lydia Pincher. She, and I'm just giving one sentence per person and they'll introduce their project a little bit. So when I heard what she's doing, I would describe it as she is working on making Wikipedia even better through a project called Wiki Data. So it's all about sharing information in the open, building the tools behind and getting that community going. Then we have Ramon Roca. I hope I pronounced this correctly. He has built, I think the simple way to describe it is, he has become an internet service provider in Spain, kind of in the open. Started with a local project and then brought basically the people in this local area to the internet together. And then we have Shane Coughlin, and he has been building the Open Relief project, which was, I think, in reaction to the tsunami that happened in Japan. And he has, together with other people, built a very interesting tool, actually hardware and software, to help in the emergency situation all the helpers to get pictures and data about an area after a disaster. So I'd like to start with Lydia first. Tell us a little bit more about your project and what made you start this project, or what made you participate in it.
So the project is.
You have to press the button. No, press the. Now it's on.
It was on. All right. So the project I'm working on, as he already said, is called Wiki Data, and it's basically building up a very large base of structured data that can be used in the Wikipedias and outside of them. Why I joined the project is because it's really, really cool. And it's going to make Wikipedia so much better. And Wikipedia as a project is just amazing. I mean, it's the 5th largest website, and the only one of those that doesn't track you, that, let's say, respects you. Let's say it like that. So I would just think that's really, really cool, what Wikipedia has achieved over the last 11 years.
Okay. And you joined that project, you said, so you haven't been the founder, but you have been one of the people behind the scenes creating this.
Right. So about 7 months now ago, I joined the project when it was started. Mm-hmm. And I'm working at Wikimedia Germany now, the German chapter of the Wikimedia movement, to build this. Yes.
Okay. So Shane, how about you and your project?
All right, so I'm one of the founding volunteers of the Open Relief Project. This is a project to create tools that help clear some of the uncertainty after a disaster occurs. So in essence, Open Relief is about filling in gaps in disaster relief. As you mentioned, we're building hardware and software together, solutions which can be used as sensors or reconnaissance, in particular a drone technology we've developed which costs about $1,000, making it the cheapest drone with this type of capability in the world. It's all open source hardware, open source software. The idea is to help disaster relief responders do their work a little bit better simply by filling in the gaps in current technology in as open and accessible a way as possible. This all comes out of the 2011 Japanese Tohoku disaster, where we had a very large earthquake and tsunami. And it really taught us a lesson about how long it takes to find out what has happened in a disaster zone. And yet we have the technology to do it a lot more quickly. So we're trying to bridge that gap, bring the technology to market a lot more rapidly than it has been moving so far.
And you said you're one of the, or you're co-founder of that. So I think we can imagine what your motivation is. It's helping other people, right?
That's right. I was one of the people helping deliver aid into the disaster zone in Japan. And it was striking that almost 2 weeks after the disaster, we couldn't determine if certain villages were still there or if there were people in shelters nearby who needed help. It was just the scale. We lost 500 kilometers of coastline with water coming in up to 10 kilometers inland. We were overwhelmed, and the motivation of myself and other people contributing is that in future we might be able to reduce the level to which infrastructure is knocked down and the speed at which we can recover. So it's very much a humanitarian approach.
Thank you. Raman, about your project, sounds very interesting. Tell us how this came all together.
We like to define or describe it as a bottom-up approach for building the telecommunications, building the internet. So, in short, it doesn't mean that we take the internet from the telco operators as regular. So we take the lead as a users and we create the infrastructure. So that's how I think it describes the project. To make it happen, it needs to happen in a commons basis. Also, it means the infrastructure that we build is a commons kind of managed network.
Okay. And your personal motivation to participate in that was because your internet was too slow, you didn't have anything where you lived? What
right.
was your...
There is many motivations because it's something that I cannot do alone. It need to happen within a community. But in my particular case, it was because I live in a rural area. So in places like that, you have no chance if you want to get a quality bandwidth connection. So if you take the lead and you do by yourself, then you can find a solution for that. And actually, in my particular case, it was because of that. But in many other cases, maybe it's... so in my case, it was because of need. I had no choice. Fortunately, when you see in the cities, maybe there are people who maybe can get the broadband for a regular telco, but maybe they prefer to build and still have control of the infrastructure by themselves because they can get either better services or they are not under control of somebody else, or they pay whatever the cost is, the real cost is, instead of whatever fee the telco wants to make you pay for.
Okay. So if I listen to that, I think what is in common to all three of you, you started something with a common interest. Either it was your very personal interest or you wanted to help somebody, but there was an interest that was shared. There was a common motivation, there was a common idea, and you grouped together with other people. Now that happens a lot. You have all kinds of interesting groups. Some people do a cycle tour together, some people buy some land to do gardening together, whatever. What made you decide to do this in the open rather in the closed? I mean, you could have just locally talked to a couple of people and, not going public on LinuxCon and talking about the project, just making this a local event. So whoever wants to answer, what was the key for you or the moment, if you remember, where you said, I want to do this in the open?
May I briefly start?
Sure.
For us, it was simply that we're trying to accomplish something that is extremely difficult. So the hardware and software combination for reconnaissance and sensors is an immensely complex problem. And you can't know if you're on the right track until you get a huge amount of feedback from technicians, from disaster relief responders, from commercial entities to let you know, is this a viable solution to solve a broad problem around the world, or is it a pipe dream? So going public for us was a litmus test. Had the proof of concept come up with something that is viable for the future? So that's why we went on stage in LinuxCon Japan, and we said to the guys, look, here's where we are, here's what we've got, here's where we're going. What do you think? So it was really about making sure the idea was viable and getting a little bit more help to bring it into a production-ready state.
So is it fair to say it was more the initial thought was a sanity check of external expertise?
Yeah, a sanity check and a contribution call. So, is this crazy? If it's not crazy, for goodness sake, help us. We're trying to save people's lives here.
Good. How about the other two?
So for Wiki Data, there wasn't actually a lot of choice, and I mean, MediaWiki, so the software Wikipedia runs on, is free software, and building on top of that has to be free software too. But building it in the open and not just building it somewhere and then dropping it to the outside, of course, was very important because you need the buy-in of the whole community, basically, that this is the right thing and that they are going to support it after we are finished with our work. And you only get this buy-in if you engage them from the very start. And that's what we did.
Right, if I remember your presentation with the light in the different geographies.
Right.
So if it would have been the English-speaking community that would have created it, or a smaller group, then you might not have addressed the needs of other languages in other countries. So.
Exactly.
Okay, so to make it broad, basically, was your idea.
Yeah, to make it broad and useful in the end.
And because the open model of Wikipedia had worked out well.
Right.
In our case was from the very beginning, because I think that there was no other way to go, for two main reasons, I will say. One is, if you are truly willing for creating a network as from the user side, I mean, in opposite, I mean, we are not trying to build private networks connecting ourselves. So it means we should be open, like internet. So we have to follow the original spirit. Let's say there are other versions of internet, but we want to keep the original version of the internet. So we want to be part of it. And secondly, because as citizens, if we want to truly become an alternative to big telcos, every one of us can do a very small contribution. In terms of big infrastructure, you cannot make an infrastructure happen in all your country. Maybe connect your home with your neighbor and something like that. And the key point is to aggregate everything. So the only way to aggregate infrastructures is to make them happen as a commons and in an open way. So there was no alternative, I think.
Good.
If I might add, one thing that seems to come out of that is that if you're solving a bigger problem, which is meant to affect a lot of people, you need to have a lot of people involved in the solution. If you're just solving a problem for 5 or 10 or 100 people, that can be smaller. But I think in all of our cases, we were trying to create a bigger solution for a problem that could impact a lot of people. And that means you need to build a bigger community.
Yeah, so it's the bigger brain power, the bigger manpower, that helps accelerate a project. Now, common interest. The decision to do it in the open was common to the 3 projects to you. How did you go public about it? So the moment you decided, I want to do it in the open, did you go in your local city and pin it at the Myers board? We're going to create a network here. How did you do it? I would like to hear, what was your going public step? Actually,
it was very much like that, because we were already doing the network as a citizens between us, somehow in an informal way. At a given point, we realized that it makes sense to make it publicly available to all, and it's really when it really makes it open, truly, in terms of, because if not, we are private. So at a given point, we decided that we should publish a commons statement saying how everybody can join and all of this stuff. So yeah, it was part of it. And at a given point, and actually it was funny because it was when the mayor of the municipality got connected. So because we were getting the internet from the library of the particular municipality and said, I cannot do privately. So if I do, we will, because the mayor of the municipality was also one of those people who were not able to get the internet. So everybody in the same village has to have a chance to getting connected to the internet owned by the municipality.
So lobbying is important, embracing the boss of the town,
and lobbying
and
in the small villages in rural areas like us. I mean, it's quite easy because everybody knows each other, it's familiar, and so on. When you are approaching large cities and so on, it's so difficult because in terms of telecommunications, there is also another lobbying who are pushing for private infrastructures, and absolutely the opposite that we are saying, that has lots of power and money for spending and lobbying in Brussels and so on. So it's important that the open community, also is what you said, I mean, the openness can be applied to several subjects. Here we have a very good example in terms of software, open source conference, Lydia, about data, about industrial developments, I don't know how to call it, but it's very interesting. And in our case, about network infrastructure. So, I mean, openness is a thing that really applies to many subjects.
How about your public step? How did you publish your project?
That is actually a very good question. So there were several projects before Wiki Data doing something similar. So, for example, I think it was the first one in 2005 where Danny, who is now leading the project, announced together with Markus Krotsch Semantic Media Wiki at Wikimedia's annual conference in a talk. So in some sense that was the first step, I guess. But there, for our project, I guess it was a step-by-step process, so there were a few mailing list posts here and there, and I think the big one was news item on TechCrunch, which inside made me scream a little because, yeah, getting so much attention so early is dangerous. But yeah, I think that was the big splash.
Okay, so there was, I would say, at a particular specialist conference, there was the idea shared, and then later, when you had something to really start, and you used a very well-known channel that everybody is listening to.
Yeah.
And in our case, we started talking about going public after we reached a milestone of proving it was feasible. The idea was originally mooted around the time of LinuxCon 2011, just after the Tohoku disaster. I don't know if Lars is in this room, perhaps not. Lars was one of the people on a panel with me where we started discussing this. And we were saying that, you know, Linux is really good on high availability, server side, and so on. How can it be used on the front line? And the answer there was, not really. and you know, that's where it started. And the idea of having drones and this type of technology is blue sky and impossible, quite frankly. So until we had prototypes operational and ready to go in the air, we couldn't go public because we had a big idea that sounded silly. But as soon as we had prototypes that were functional, we wanted to put it out there. That was our moment to go public and say to people, well, here you go. It can be done. These cost about $1,000 to make an airplane that can fly itself and map a disaster zone. Now let's get it production ready. So that was our trigger point. But until that point, it was a private development. It was a small group of relative specialists to try and get it proven that we can build this technology in the real world.
Okay. So you've published a project, it's out there, it's known. What were the first reactions, both positive and negative. I can just imagine what you did in Spain. I mean, in Germany there is a whole bureaucracy of giving certain bandwidths to certain providers only, and now here comes somebody who's putting out antennas and using frequencies out there. Probably a lot of people applauded, and others maybe had questions, and the same questions to all three of you. So, what were the reactions?
In our case, we started, we went public, and the problem is that from one side, in terms of legal issues, and so it's always a concern in telecommunications, but the fact, and it's almost same thing across all Europe, telecommunications has been liberalized since many years ago already because of EU directives that all the countries have to follow, right? So there was nothing wrong in actually what we were doing. On the other hand, internet happens because of interconnection. So there is already legal rules around there that are forcing the operators to get interconnected between them, and that's what's creating internet. So internet is not owned by a single company; it's because of interconnection. So we were actually just doing that, but. To be true, I mean, when we started doing that, we were not very welcome by the others. And this is a key point, I think. Although we were not welcome, unless we want to give away the internet to them, we should take part of them. So it's very important, instead of creating a parallel internet, whatever, because of privacy, whatever, if we want really defend internet neutrality and so on, we should be there, be part of them. We will not be welcome to the others, because actually we are creating competition, we compete with them, but we have to compete happily, and it's funny actually to fight with them. So I invite everybody to join in that
I think
fight.
this is a mood that's shared in this room, right? We're always in constant fight with bigger people, and either on the software, hardware, or whatever side. But I think we all like to fight. I think that is certainly in common in the open source movement. Oh.
Yeah, I guess so. So Wiki Data at the beginning got basically every reaction you can think of, from, oh yes, this is amazing, please can I have it yesterday, to to, oh my god, what are you doing, to, this is impossible. Basically everything you can think of.
How about in your case? How about people building drones already, or thinking what you could do with them?
A lot of people build drones. I think that's worth pointing out. There's a community called DIY Drones with about 10,000 members. But what we were doing was a little bit different, because we were pushing the boundaries a lot further than an amateur drone. We were asking these drones to be purposed in very difficult environments. And along the way, we've pushed the technology out there with a current airframe which goes about 1,000 kilometers under gasoline. It can fly at 160 kilometers an hour. It can carry 9 kilograms of cargo. This type of technology was out in the governmental sphere and quite expensive commercial sphere just a couple of years ago. But even when we launched in June, when we had a less capable airframe, we met with two types of response. One was ecstatic. Wow, that's so cool. You're building robot aeroplanes to save lives, which is cool. And the other one was slight horror, because people were saying, oh my God, you're building robot aeroplanes that can spy on us or be used as weapons by terrorists. Both reactions are too emotional. All we're dealing with are tools that can be utilized to solve problems. Sometimes tools will be misused, sometimes tools will be used perfectly. I'd say in the majority of cases, people are inherently going to use tools like drones for positive, productive purposes. And sometimes people will misbehave. The point is that the reaction we got tended to be entirely hysterical in a positive way or entirely hysterical in a negative way. There was relatively little middle ground where people said, this is an awesome path. It's going to take a lot of development and a lot of refinement. How do we help? Thankfully, we got quite a few people who did do that, enough that our development has increased in its speed. But slight hysteria was the issue that we dealt with, probably because we were pushing a boundary, something very unusual.
So is it fair to say, from my own experience, that once you've gone public, you have to survive the initial going public wave of reactions, which usually is just verbal, everybody has opinions, there are not many people contributing other than with words, right, with opinions. And I think many people give up. You have a great idea, and there's always somebody in the world who is against it, who has reasons why it won't work, legal reasons, whatever, challenging you. So is it fair to say you had to have enough personal interest, to just ignore that and go on?
Well, I think it's really important that you have a vision of where you're going, and that you're not afraid to essentially say, thank you for your input, you're wrong. And that's it.
Yeah.
And you also must not be afraid to use your delete key with some of the nonsense that comes your way. So you need to have a political ability to find the good input and to survive the bad. But I agree. I think some of our community got a little burnt out by the wave of enthusiasm and criticism simultaneously. Just that energy is tiring.
Yeah, I completely agree. On both the negative and the positive can be harmful to your project. But both of them can also be extremely useful for you, of course. On the one hand, the enthusiastic people can be the ones who take the message to more people. And the people who have doubts and tell you this is not possible, on the one hand, show you where your problems are if you don't know them yet. And also, if you can do this, push you to prove them wrong, right? Yeah, you have to know how to use them, both of them. It's not always easy.
Yeah, I think personal interest and a lot of pride is involved in demonstrating the world you can actually do it.
Often innovation is perceived as something dangerous. And the examples with drones that can be misused, same thing happened to us in terms of networks. Networks can be used for good things or for bad things. The key point, and Shane, I think it was very good, innovation will happen anyway. If it does, drones will be actually were there before, and maybe also in some cases misused because of wars or whatever, instead of being used for relief purposes and like that. And in what has a common point of thing is that all things that are made with open source, open hardware, or open networks tend to be much more social efficient, friendly, for not bad purposes, are much safer in general, I'm taking. Of course, could be exceptions, but I mean, drones will be there anyway, regardless of open source or not. And open source will very much help in making them be useful for nice things that maybe were not used until now, right? Yeah. Cheaper and more available to NGOs worldwide, whatever.
For communications, obviously. Making that technology allows people to do a lot of good. And while there's criticism that someone could do bad, that's the nature of humanity. It's not the technology.
The next step. So you've survived that wave. And then from my experience, the next step is you have to reach both users and developers, right? Because you can share a common dream. Everybody wants to have this internet, but somebody has to do the work, like putting up the antennas, doing the cabling in the house, doing the hard work to get there, on your side, hardware or software. So what is your experience in getting user interest? And what is your experience at getting developers, helpers, people in the ecosystem that put it together?
It's one of our biggest challenges from now. I think that we didn't succeed completely because it's a very slow process, and actually it's about creating that ecosystem, telling the people. I think it's easy to capture the interest of users. I mean, it's very easy. I have 1 gig at home, and it costs me less than, just maintenance, it's less than 10 euros a month. So it's very easy to capture, but it's difficult to happen, and we need to improve that, and actually is why I'm very happy being here and trying to explain. It's actually our current challenge. I mean, it's possible, but it's slow. It's hopefully in the near future, as long as we create methodologies, we are providing better examples how to adapt to every single country regulations and so on. We will improve.
So you have a lot more user demand than you have
Sure.
people who can
Sure.
deliver it.
Sometimes I'm very much afraid on going there, explaining things, because actually we don't meet the demand. But if you think in the good terms, in economic terms, if the demand is greater than the offer, so it's a huge opportunity. So it's a matter of training professionals and make those economics happen. It tells you that it's possible. We don't meet the demand. That's actually good news also.
I think in your case it's a bit difficult because it's the developer community is still pretty young, right?
Yes, exactly. It's still pretty young, but I mean I can still two things. One thing is that especially if you just start, you have to do so much hand-holding, and every single person who comes to you is valuable, nearly every one of them is a potential future contributor, and a lot of time is spent on that. But in the long run, I think those first contributors are so important. And the other thing is, what I once again notice now is that TechCrunch, Slashdot, and Co. make horrible funnels of contributors. Like, basically nothing useful comes out of them in terms of getting you people to actually help. That's at least my experience.
You know, it's an interesting challenge to try to produce, let's call it an end product. And for us, we've got something that's very well advanced, but has a long way to go. So I think, as Lydia said, core contributors who really know their stuff are very important. As you said, demand. If you've got a lot of demand, don't worry so much about accelerating. Make sure you deliver right. So core contributors, good vision, find out where the demand is, what they really need, and build to that. OpenRelief is a design project. We're never going to be producing drones. We're going to be designing and then releasing that for the market and having commercial entities and non-commercial entities able to build this all around the world. We want to have the first airframe technology formally released in December, and we're on track for that. But our priority isn't meeting an arbitrary deadline. It isn't impressing people. It isn't getting on TechCrunch. We want to get that technology out there to save people's lives. If we can get it this December in first generation so people like Team Rubicon or even the Red Cross can begin testing, awesome. If we can't, okay. Let's get it right. Let's keep going. Along the way, you'll disappoint a lot of amateur enthusiasts who want magic to happen right away, or who think that it's simple to build these technologies at production ready. That's okay as well. You're looking at a long-term targeted demand. Maybe the important thing is vision. Have a strong vision, stick to it, and don't get distracted by the noise, the enthusiasm, or the criticism. Go for that long goal.
I absolutely want to go there in two more questions. There's one more step in between. So now you have contributions to a certain degree. You have developed your ecosystem, the people who contribute pieces of it. You even talked about you never want to produce something, right? So it's more of a design thing. So amongst your community and your own opinion, is it a problem if people now take what you have done and commercialize that or not? And have you taken any measures to protect that others just take away and steal what you've done?
We want everyone to commercialize it as quickly as possible. But our measure around that to make sure that the technology is available is that we use open source software and open hardware licenses. So you can commercialize it, but you can't turn it into proprietary solutions. That's how we cooperate. That's why we all, as professionals, volunteer. And that's why it will be sustainable in the future. But we want commercial investment to get the solutions around the world.
So you have no commercial interest yourself, but you have you absolutely welcome commercial success of these drones becoming the
Sure.
absolute disaster angel for many, many countries.
Yeah, I mean, what we did in terms of designing this was already aimed to push the price point way down. This isn't about making young millionaires. We're looking at a $1,000 drone with immense capability. It's never going to be a high profit area, but some airplane producers might find it useful as an additional revenue stream. I personally do not aim to commercialize around this technology at this point in time. Of course, if it turned out there was a huge market, I might suddenly be like, ooh, Shane Plane Corporation, off I go. But again, I'm likewise constrained by the open hardware and open source software licenses. This will never be proprietary technology, but it can be and should be commercialized by whoever can make money out of it and get it spread around the world.
So it's free software. So as long as people stick to the rights and rules of it, they're very welcome to do so. The goal of the Wikimedia Foundation and movement is to bring knowledge to people. If this happens for free, fine. If someone makes money with it, they make money with it. That's fine as well, I guess. So yeah, the end goal is important, getting knowledge to people.
I like the question because it's important to understand. Some people have difficulties, but I assume that everybody in his room will understand perfectly that by keeping openness with certain assets, like in our case is a network infrastructure, that creates a huge business opportunity to others. So it makes sense because I mean, in the case of internet, it's the word internet service providers. So actually the reality is that internet is in the hands of a few people that are making money with that, regardless of the service that they are providing, right? So the key point are, professionals who are linked to the territory and so on can make a business on their services that they are providing because people want, and professionals want, and enterprises want service level agreements. People who live with less than 2 hours will go there and fix whatever problem that they have and will pay happily because of that. So by keeping internet free as and infrastructures as a common asset, then it's important to understand that can create maybe a bigger business opportunity and more, let's say, democratic in terms that is not on hands of particular, guys, and it's so everybody who wants to take profit of that business opportunities by providing services will be able to do so.
Great, yeah. So, I mean, for a company like SUSE, it's the same. We are with the open source community, we are developing in the open source community. At the same time, we are commercializing this product, we are selling it, which in turn allows me to hire a lot of engineers and have more people working on Linux and also to sponsor a conference like this. But it's important, it stays all open, and in our spirit of SUSE, we absolutely want to give back, and I think this is then what brings you the avalanche effect, right? So you do something, you have a great idea, you start it in the open, and then you make it bigger, and with that you can nurture even bigger projects, more ideas, and other things. So my last question that I want to ask you is about vision. So some of your projects are pretty young. If you think out 2-3 years from now, that's not too far out, I think. What would be the ideal outcome of your project, and what do you need actually to get there? So this is also your chance to ask the room or everybody who listens to this, what kind of help do you need to get there?
Well, we are very ambitious. One slogan we have is Internet for All, worldwide. And we are still too small, although we are, as a community, we're quite big in terms of community wireless. But in a time frame of 2-3 years, and more reasonably, what I would like to see is there are already communities worldwide. So start cooperating much more actively between us. And actually, one of the projects that we have, we call it bottom-up broadband for Europe, because European Commission was helping us in trying to move this forward, but we want to make it worldwide. So let's see if bottom-up broadband approach grows and we start cooperating much more intensively between communities?
In 2 to 3 years, hard to say, but I, of course, would like Wikidata to be used a lot in Wikipedias and also outside of it. People doing cool stuff on top of it. And on the software side, I would really love for the community to take the software into their hands after we have done a lot of the groundwork.
For us, the vision is not about technology. Technology is necessary, but it's not what we're about. So the robot plane, for example, is what most people fixate on, and it's largely irrelevant. We're solving a problem of finding out what's happening. And in 2 or 3 years, I would like a particular situation never to occur again. In Japan last year, we found a gentleman on a roof almost a week after, just over a week after the tsunami, alive, around 10 kilometers out to sea. This gentleman was found by a normal Coast Guard overfly service. In that situation, he was the only person I saw who was found in the water days after the event. A lot of people were not found. In 2 to 3 years, I'd like to see a situation where we can leverage knowledge, whether it's hardware or software, to be able to remap the disaster zones and get to people so this will never happen again. So basically that's what we want to do, to close that information gap and to solve that type of problem and to get there in that type of time frame.
Thank you very much. I would like to open it up now to the audience. If you have any questions about what you heard, additional information that you want to get from these people, now is the moment to ask more about the challenges and advantages of going open. There's one question. Maybe we have to bring up a mic. We have 2 already here, so I think.
Hi. I wanted to ask, you said that you wanted to grow in quality, not in quantity. But also, where do you draw the line where good enough is good enough? I mean, if you were to just polish the design of the aircraft, for example, to a certain point, it would just take too much time. When it's good enough?
When it works. Basically, we just want to be able to have a reconnaissance completed. If the airframe can do that and can come back and do it again, it's done. It's ready to go out. And then further iterations will improve it. So yeah, best is never the question when you have a project like this. It's can responders use it to solve a problem, and can they use it more than once? Once you're there, that's it. You'll do further iterations, but we're not looking for best, we're not looking for perfection. We have no interest in engineering for the sake of engineering or technology for the sake of technology. We're trying to get out there to save people. That said, there's a lot of areas where we are really stuck, and that's where you guys come in. So for instance, software integration, we have individual components for all of the things we want to do, but tying it all together, we need help. We need people who can code Python. We need people who can help with user interfaces. We really need a hand to make sure that disaster responders can use this crazy technology in a simple way and their minds don't get blown and they don't need their hands held by super technical geeks. But yeah, as soon as we get to the point where a disaster responder can fly it, mission accomplished.
Thank you.
Do we have another questions?
Okay, then I think to sum this all up, 3 very different stories which have the open in common. I think we've gone through the common elements of it, the common spirit. There was a personal interest or a group interest to get there. There was the moment of opening up. There were some challenges on the way. There was relentlessness to navigate through them and continue. There were challenges of getting more people, and I feel the spirit is still there. I find all 3 projects very interesting, and I want to thank my 3 guests here today for sharing the time with us. Thank you very much. is yours here. Yeah, I think so. Thank you very much.